Hi, you're welcome to our class this day. Today we'll be looking at government and we'll continue with our military regime in Nigeria. And don't forget, the last time we had military regime in Nigeria, I said military come into power through what is known as coup d'etat, where they forcefully take over power from the sitting head of state or a sitting president. Now, we want to look at the series of regimes we've had, military regimes we've had in Nigeria up to date. The first time we had military coup in Nigeria was in January 15, 1966. The coup was actually masterminded by a 26-year-old boy, young soldier called Kaduna Nzogu. But after the coup, Johnson JTU Agiyosi was made the head of state. This coup of January 1966 was seen as Igbo coup because most of the people military of those days were majorly Igbos, and this angered the northern soldiers, as in after the coup it was discovered that the Sardauna of Sokoto, who was the premier of the northern region then, Sir Ahmadu Bello, was killed. The prime minister of Nigeria, of the nation, Sir Tafawa Balewa, was also killed. But the Igbo leaders were not killed. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was not killed, and Chief Obafemi Awolowo was not killed. So it was seen as a coup against the northern leaders. This caused another coup known as counter coup to erupt on the 29th of July 1966. This coup brought into power Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon ruled for 9 years. But I must let you know that, like I said in the previous class, the major purpose of military intervention in any nation is to stabilize the nation during the period of crisis, and after stabilizing the nation, they hand over power back to the civilians. But I've always said this has never been so in developing countries like African countries. Once the soldiers taste power and the nation's resources, they become reluctant to relinquish power to the civilians. General Yakubu Gowon, yes, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, later General Yakubu Gowon, ruled for 9 years, after which Brigadier Murtala Mohammed came into power through another coup. About the coup of Dinka. Okay, through another coup. Brigadier Murtala Mohammed came into power because he felt Yakubu Gowon wanted to perpetrate himself into office. And let me let you know this. If a sitting military head of state is to hand over power to civilian, he must do the following things. Number one, he must register political parties. 2, he must establish electoral commission. Today we call it INEC. And 3, he must conduct election. So a sitting head of state who is willing to relinquish power to the civilian government, must begin to register political parties and establish electoral commission that will conduct the election and eventually conduct election that will bring into power civilian government. However, this was not the case in the case of Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon. So Brigadier Murtala Mohammed suspected that Since there was no political party registered, electoral commission was not established, so he suspected that Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon wanted to perpetuate himself in office, and he wanted to stay for life in office, and that resulted in a coup that brought in Brigadier Muritala Muhammad into power on the 13th February 1976. His vice was Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, later General Olusegun Obasanjo. Now this regime, take note, is actually called Muritala Obasanjo regime. The reason is this: Muritala only used 200 days in office. That's about 6 months. It never lasted before another coup, a party coup of Dinka, took place that took his life. But because, take note, during a coup, the sitting head of state must be killed so that the masterminders of the coup will come into power. When the sitting head of state or his vice remains alive, that coup is aborted. So later on, Dinka masterminded a coup which took Brigadier Muritala Muhammad, later General Muritala Muhammad, but his vice was still alive. His vice, Olusegun Obasanjo, came into power and continued all the plans and wishes of Muritala Muhammad. Whatever program they had during their manifesto, Olusegun Obasanjo continued there, and that was why it was called Muritala Obasanjo regime. Muritala Obasanjo regime was adjudged about the best regime. Why? They were sincere and honest. They vowed to relinquish power or return power to civilians, which they did by one, registering political parties, establishing electoral commission, and eventually in 1979, Obasanjo conducted an election, which brought into power the first elected president, generally known as the first executive president. Take note, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe is not the first executive president, but he is the first president of Nigeria. But he was not elected by the people. But Alhaji Shehu Shagari is the first elected president of Nigeria, so he stands the first executive president of Nigeria. So the election of 1979 brought in the first executive president of Nigeria, Alhaji Shehu Shagari. That regime was adjudged the most corrupt regime. And this angered now General Muhammadu Buhari, who eventually plotted another coup on December 1983 and brought him into power. A coup was plotted against Muhammadu Buhari by General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, and that coup is termed the Palace Coup on August 27, 1985. That brought General Ibrahim Babangida into power. While in office, a coup was plotted against him, Vesta coup, on December, just barely 4 months of his regime, December 1985. It didn't succeed. Another coup against Ibrahim Babangida was plotted by Major Gideon Oka. It was an abortive coup. It wasn't successful. On the 22nd of April 1990. I know. Eventually, Babangida was the first military head of state that changed the title of a city head of state from head of state to president. So he's the first person to become head of state and the president. He did that in 1990. He created some states. We'll come to that. He conducted an election between two major political parties, NRC and SDP, where The popular mandate of the people, MK Abiola, won, and IBB annulled the election, which angered the people. Eventually, in 1993, he constituted what is known as interim government. Interim government. And this brought in Chief Ernest Shonekan. Chief Ernest Shonekan. Chief Ernest Shonekan had the shortest regime so far. He stayed in power for about 3 months. When then Defense Minister Sani Abacha, later General Sani Abacha, plotted another bloodless coup. Now bloodless because nobody was killed, and took over power from Chief Ernest Shonekan on the 17th November 1993. Abacha eventually ruled and died on June 8, 1998. Then General Abdulsalam Abubakar came into power, who eventually relinquished power to civilian government on the 29th of May 1999 through free and fair election. And this was what we did in previous lesson. Now let's go straight to look at characteristics of military regime. Characteristics of military regime. What marks a military regime out? When we look at military regime with other systems of government. Number one, let me let you know this. Whenever the military come into power, the first thing the military does is to suspend the constitution. The reason is this: they don't obey rule. They don't obey laws. They make their laws through what is known as decree. They use force. Now, if there is a constitution in the land, it will inhibit and hinder their way of dictatorial rule. So the first thing they do is to remove the constitution of the land. Another thing they do is to suspend the legislative house. They cancel the legislative house and create what is known as Supreme Military Council. So take note of this. In civilian government, we call the leader president or what have you, but in military we call it head of state. The governor in civilian government we call it governor, or if it is regional government we call it premier. But in military we have military administrator. For example, during the time of Sani Abacha, Brigadier Buba Marwa was the military administrator of Lagos State. So take note: president as against head of state, then governor as against military administrator. Again, we now have parliament, the House of Assembly, House of Representatives, the parliament, the legislative house. In civilian government, then we have Supreme Military Council that makes law in military. Then we have constitution in civilian government, then we have decree in military government. So let's go. Characteristics of military regime. Number one, they practice centralization. The reason is this: don't forget that in centralization, all powers are concentrated in central. Means all the peripheral arms of government are weak. The central government is stronger. Now, because the military head of state wants to dictate for the nation, they must practice central or centralized system of government. Number two, they make laws by decree. Let us keep on that. They will just wake up the next day and say nobody should walk on the street of Lagos. Decree, and that becomes a law. They suspend constitution. That's another characteristic. Number four, they usually do not tolerate opposition. Normally, a good democratic system of government, there must be opposition. Why? Remember, opposition is to bring about checks and balance on the ruling political party or the ruling president. If there is no opposition, then the ruling president will perpetrate himself into office and carry out what is known as arbitrary rule. Arbitrary rule. And this is completely dictatorial. But as long as there is opposition or opposition party, the ruling party will be cautious of whatever decision they take. So, military regimes do not tolerate opposition. In fact, they whip anybody who opposes them. They practice dictatorship. There's usually no rule of law. They don't obey. They will just come. They will come in and see that you are not in order and start flogging. They don't know, is it constitutional? Am I violating this person's human rights or not? They don't forget the constitution has been removed. So since constitution has been removed, nothing to point them to rule of law. They enforce law through instrument of violence, flog and flog. Nobody must come out on the street of Lagos, and when you violate that, they flog and use their boots and what have you. They usually involve civilians in the rule, and that's one thing. They usually involve civilians, especially in civil service. They bring out civilians who are knowledgeable to head that. In judiciary council, civil service council, they constitute bodies like that to see to those council. They make the decision through Supreme Military Council. I told you, Supreme Military Council is like the parliament, the legislative house in civilian government. Now let's look at causes of military coup of 1960s. What caused the military coup of 1960s? Number one, regionalization of political parties. Political parties before now, in the First Republic, was regionalized. For example, Action Group AG is the political party for Western Nigeria. National Congress of Nigeria and Cameroon, NCNC, was the political party for the Eastern Nigeria, while NPC, Northern People Congress, was the political party for Northern region of the country. Unlike what we have now, if we have People Democratic Party today, you will find the Igbos, the Yoruba, the Hausa, all tribes there. If you have APC today, All Progressive Congress, you have all tribes there. Then, it was regionalized. Action Group was made up of completely Yorubas, the Western Nigerians. NCNC completely Igbos, and NPC completely Hausa. This brought about tribalism. So, because I belong to AG, those in NCNC are Igbos, I automatically see NCNC. Since we automatically see NCNC as opposition to AG, I will automatically see Igbos as opposition to Yorubas. It brought about tribalism. So there cannot be stability in such country. Number two, inter-party rivalry. This is grave, and this is one of the great causes of military intervention in 1966. Inter-party rivalry. Now take note, inter means between, intra means within. Now inter-party rivalry of what party? Action Group. Chief Obafemi Awolowo was the premier of the Western region. So, by rule of thumb, is the chairman of Action Group. His vice was Chief Samuel Ladoke Akintola. Now there was an election. Chief Obafemi Awolowo wanted to leave the region to go to the central government. So he contested. He lost. Although while losing, they made him minority leader. When he went, SL Akintola, of course, became the chairman of the party. But while Chief Obafemi Awolowo remained as the minority leader in the central government, he still wants to dictate to SL Akintola what goes on in the party. He wanted to dictate who to choose, who to make ruler in the party. That angered SL Akintola, who felt, no, you've left this, you are now at this other end, you cannot now come and be dictating for us what goes on here. And you know, as we have it in Africa, you know, like the normal thing. You'll feel like, who are you? I brought you. Akintola, I brought you. And now you're fighting the niggas that fed you? No. And Akintola, you know what you actually are? Like in Yoruba Palace, forget it. That's old school. You brought me, I am not the leader. I know what this will bring result in. The supporters of Chief Awolowo and the supporters of Akintola will begin to clash. Again, Chief Awolowo and SL Akintola differ in whether AG should merge with NCNC or NPC. Chief Awolowo wanted to merge with NPC. SL Akintola wanted to merge with NCNC. They differ. Take note, they differ in two places. One, who to pick within the party as executive. Chief Awolowo wanted to dictate who to pick, and SL Akintola felt, I am the chairman. Again, they differ on whether Action Group should merge with NCNC and NPC. This resulted in the faction, the lead supporters of Awolowo and supporters of Akintola fighting and burning, causing arsons, killing, and like whereby coffee was placed in the nation. And I must tell you this, during this period, our Prime Minister was traveling abroad, and our military was based abroad. But whenever our soldiers asked him abroad, sir, what's going on in the country, he tells them the country is okay. And our boys, our soldiers were not too happy. And at the time, they converged and planned how they would come over and take over and bring peace to the nation by coup d'etat. And this was masterminded by the young 26-year-old soldier, Kaduna Chukwuma Nzogu. Another cause of military coup of 1966 was the census crisis of 1962 and 1963. Then, after the census, the region that has more people will have more seats in the parliament. So when they did the first census, 1962, it was discovered that the northern region was more than the addition of the eastern region and the western region. So they gave them more seats, about over 172 seats in the parliament, while they gave the eastern region and western region few seats. So the eastern and western region rejected the figure of the census of 1962. This now prompted the nation to conduct another census in 1963. At this point, the figure favored the northern region and partly the western region, but still did not favor the eastern region. The eastern region rejected this figure, the western region supported the figure, and the northern region. So the eastern elites boycotted a lot of things in the nation. But since the city president or the prime minister was from NPC and is a northerner, he gave the order that this figure was the final, and this resulted in crisis in the nation. Another cause of military coup of 1966 was the 1964 federal election crisis. We'll come to that later. And now the Western Nigeria election crisis of 1965. This was the crisis between UPGA and NNDP. Take note, as a result of the fight, intra-party rivalry in Action Group, SL Akintola, there was a convention in Jos that criticized SL Akintola. I mean, Action Group had convention in Jos where the leaders, national leaders of the party, criticized SL Akintola and elected somebody else as the premier. SL Akintola later formed NNDP. Now, this Western Nigeria election crisis of 1965 was between UPGA and NNDP. NNDP was criticized for rigging and taking part in electoral malpractices. We'll come to that later. We have also have politicization of the army. This was terrible. Then the southern part of Nigeria and the northern part of Nigeria were not in total agreement on how to promote military leaders. The northern leaders felt that the military leaders should be promoted, the soldiers should be promoted based on those that had courage, while the southern leaders felt no, they should promote them based on their qualification. This caused an issue, a crisis. Another one is Togo coup. How do you feel that the Nigerian soldiers were based abroad with other soldiers from other parts of Africa? And let's assume in the same dormitory where they stayed, a Togolese, a soldier, Kofi for example, was with them as a cosmate, and they now moved down to their country Togo and carried out coup. And next thing was Kofi was not made the head of state, and now you as Nzogu, you are still a soldier, a small boy, and now you now see that they are calling Kofi your cosmate respect, and it's now moving with entourage here and there, and comes to America, go to and they respect him. That is an impetus on his own to say, oh, so there is something great in carrying out coup. So the Togo coup encouraged other countries, other soldiers of other countries to carry out coup. So Togo coup was an impetus to military coup of 1966. We'll stop here for today. I hope you've enjoyed the class for today. Please don't forget, invite your friends. Let them come to this platform to learn. While the whole world is on lockdown, learning can still continue. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, like our channel. Till we meet again. Bye.